Okay, good morning, Shavua Tov. Thank you to all those joining online, to all those in person. Thank you so much to David Farkas, who is sponsoring today's shiur and lunch in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his brother, Dr. Daniel Farkas, Daniel ben Shemaya Zachrono Livracha. David, I know how close you were and are to your brother, and may his memory always be a blessing and inspiration. Parsha this week is Yitro, and the Parsha begins by Yishma Yitro, Kohen Midyan Chotein Moshe, that Yisro heard. And hearing is a significant theme of the Parsha. I wanted to highlight as the first point. Parsha begins that Yitro heard. What did Yitro hear? So we're on page 394 in the art scroll. Rashi says, Mashmu Shama Uba. What was it that he heard? Kriyat Yamsuf u'Milchemet Amalek. It's the two things that occurred right prior to this Parsha. One of them was the splitting of the sea, and Bnei Israel sing Shira. And the second thing was the war against Amalek and the victory of the Jewish people against Amalek. Amalek is not just a biological nation, but it's a notion. And Rav Chaim Soloveitchik confers from the Rambam that any nation or group that hates Israel and wants to destroy Israel out of pure hatred and anti-Semitism also has the label of Amalek. And so we know that today there are some groups like Hamas and Hezbollah that also have the status of Amalek. And the Parsha ends last week with the battle against Amalek and Bnei Israel's victory over Amalek. So the Parsha says that Yitro heard about this and he was inspired to join up with the people of Israel. A little bit later in the Parsha, Yisro, when he sees Moshe Rabbeinu judging the people over the course of the day, and we're going to come back to it and look into it and explore it a little bit more, but Yisro essentially suggests judicial reform to Moshe, and it says, Va Yishma Moshe L'kol Chotno, it's right by Shlishi, page 400, that Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law, Vayas Kol Asher Amar, and he did everything, Kol Asher Amar, whatever Yisro suggested. So that's not a simple matter for somebody to listen to his father-in-law. Moshe is the greatest prophet who ever lived, and he took Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim, and who says that this person who's just joining, that he knows everything? But Moshe Rabbeinu understood that this was a wise suggestion from Yitro to delegate to other people, and it says Vayishma. So the Parsha begins Vayishma Yitro, and then we have Vayishma Moshe. And then Bnei Israel at Har Sinai, so they say at Har Sinai, Nasev Nishma. That phrase actually appears at the end of next week's Parsha, but it's connected to this week, which is Matan Torah, when Hashem reveals the 10 Commandments. So I think one theme of this week, I think, is this concept of listening, that we need to recognize that we can learn from other people, and even though we may be very, very committed with conviction to our opinion, but it's important to listen to somebody else's opinion, somebody else's idea, and that just helps everyone grow when you approach things as a machloket l'shem shamayim, as an argument for the sake of heaven, where you could both grow if you listen to one another. We know that we follow Beit Hillel over Beit Shammai, and the Gemara says because they argued respectfully, and Hillel especially excelled in this area, where it says that Nochen ve'aluvim heim, they were easygoing, and is my video, could you see me? Yeah, okay, somebody just commented to me that my video is not working, but okay.
It's only showing me a picture that says Beth Jacob. It just shows the outside of the building.
Okay, but do other people see my face? Yes, okay, so...
Okay, I'll sign out and sign back in, thank you.
Okay, great. So the Gemara says that the reason why we follow Beit Hillel over Beit Shammai is because Nochen ve'aluvim heim, they were easygoing and forgiving, Hillel was, and the house of Hillel. And moreover, Magdimin divrei Beit Shammai lidivreim. They allowed Beit Shammai to present their argument first. And they listened to Beit Shammai, and they heard the argument of Beit Shammai, and then they presented their own. And you see that we follow Hillel over Shammai, and we have many institutions named Hillel, much fewer named Shammai, because we follow the position of Beit Hillel, they were the majority, but also, as you see from the Gemara, that they listened to Shammai. And that's here in the Parsha. Yitro listens and he acts upon that, upon what he hears. Moshe listens to his father-in-law and he acts upon it. And Bnei Israel also, Naseh v'nishma, right? They say we're going to do and we are going to listen. Rashi points out that Yisro actually had many, many different names because in Parshat Shmot, when Moshe meets the family for the first time, it calls him Reuel. So is his name Reuel or is his name Yitro? This week's Parsha is Parshat Yitro. Wow, Yitro has a Parsha named after him. And Moshe Rabbeinu listens to Yitro when he suggests this judicial reform. But actually, what is his name? So Rashi says, second Rashi, Shiva Shema Nikrulo, he actually had 7 names: Reuel, Yeter, Yitro, Chovev, Chever, Keni, Putiel. Why? So if his name is Reuel, so why was he called Yeter? If his name and people knew him as Reuel, Rashi says Al Shem Sheyiter Parsha Achat B'Torah, that it was through him that a portion was added to the Torah. Which portion? The portion about appointing judges who could support Moshe Rabbeinu in judging and overseeing the people. So it could be that, I don't think he's referring to the fact that you have a Parsha of Yitro, although that's also interesting, but I think he's pointing out that he is pointing out that Yisro made a suggestion and that became part of the Torah. And so that's why he got the name Yeter. Yeter means added, like from Yoter. And so through Yitro was added a Parsha in the Torah, so that's why he was called Yeter. Which Parsha? V'ata techazeh, who is the portion where Yitro says, appoint the judges over Israel. That could support you, that could help you. Now, the commentaries point out, and I once heard this from my teacher, Rabbi Schachter, which is that really the section of Yitro making this suggestion to Moshe begins much earlier. Means Rashi highlights the portion that begins V'ata techazeh, which is Pasuk Chaf Aleph, page 398 in the R scroll, 7 lines from the bottom, where Yitro says, now you should discern, you should appoint from among the entire people men of accomplishment, God-fearing people, men of truth, who could serve as leaders of the thousands, leaders of the hundreds, leaders of the 50s, who could help you judge. Rashi says that the portion that was added to the Torah was started from V'ata techazeh, verse 21. But really, the portion begins several psukim earlier. Really, pasuk Yudalit, where it says, "Vayar chotein Moshe." Yitro saw everything that Moshe was doing, and he says, "Ma davar hazeh asher ata oseh." What are you doing? Madu ata yoshel v'decha. Why are you acting in this way to serve Bnei Israel solo on your own without any support? Vayomer Moshe. Moshe says they're coming to seek God, and they have all these questions. And Yitro continues, verse 17. V'yomer chotein Moshe elav, lo tova davar asher ata oseh. It's not good what you're doing. And part and parcel of this, we've learned this in the past, is that the Torah is not meant for a single prophet, for a single rabbi. It's democratic. Every single Jew should have and can have access to Torah and has a relationship with Hashem. It's not like other religions where it's kind of reserved, scholarship is reserved for the elite, where they have secret meetings and we're analyzing the texts. No, the texts are open to all. And even though Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai 40 days, 40 nights, but then Moshe taught Aaron and the elders, and they taught all the people the mitzvot. That's part of the revolution of Yitro here, where he's saying that it's really that the Torah is meant to be democratic, supposed to involve everyone. And therefore, he's saying to Moshe, it's not a good thing for you to have all the authority, have all the power, and have all the responsibility that you simply can't keep up with it. But rather spread the wealth and appoint other judges and officers to lead the people. So Yitro first says, why are you doing it this way? And also, and Moshe wasn't intending for this, but kind of it suggested perhaps that everyone was, says, V'chala am nitzav alecha, all the people are standing by you from morning to evening. So Bnei Israel had left Mitzrayim, where you have this tyrant dictator who lords his power over the people. Moshe Rabbeinu was exceedingly humble, and he did not intend to lord any power over anyone. He was a great prophet and a great tzaddik who was bringing the Torah to the people. But perhaps unintentionally, he was giving off a suggestion that the notion is the power and everyone has to stand around. And Yitro is therefore saying that you might not recognize it or intend that message, but that's what's coming across. And Bnei Israel left Mitzrayim. We left that culture where it's all about being a subservience to the king. No, we've left that where now there's freedom for everyone, and everyone has access to Torah, relationship to Hashem, and you should empower people, involve other people. But getting back to Rashi says his name was what? Reuel. He received the name Yeter because a portion was added to the Torah. Which portion? Rashi says from Ve'atot Techazev, verse 21. But you see that it begins much earlier. He says he gives his questions and problems with the system. Why are you doing it in this way? Lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. It's not good what you're doing. Navol tibo. You're going to certainly wither, which is not good for the family. You're going to burn out. Navol tibo. So why doesn't Rashi say that Yitro gets credit for the additional portion of the Torah that begins from Vayar Chotein Moshe? And the answer for this is that what you see from here is that you only get credit for a problem, for raising a problem, if you have a solution. A lot of people raise complaints and questions and problems, but really, if a person just criticizes and said, this is no good and that's no good, why are you doing it this way? That's not adding anything beneficial. And that's not going to be constructive in advancing progress for the people. And so for criticism to be worthwhile, it has to come with a solution. And that's why Rashi says that Yitro really gets credit for the solution that he brings to the problems that he raises. And so that's I thought an interesting point in the Parsha of Rashi. He just very, very subtly, he says Yitro gets credit for the solution. He doesn't get credit for the criticisms. There's a room for criticism, and it's important. It's from a place of love. And also, you should try to see the positive, whether you're involved in an organization or a business or a family or with people, right? To not just see the negative, not just see what's missing, because that will lead to a miserable life. Like the joke at a kosher restaurant, where the waiter comes to the table and says, "Is anything okay?" So we should try to see the positive in people, in situations, in life. And number two, that when you do give criticism, it's carefully thought out of how you're expressing it and the nature of the relationship you have with the person, but also it needs to be from a place of love. If it's from a place of love, then the mussar has a chance of having an impact, having an influence. So it's Rashi here is subtly pointing out that Yitro, yes, there's a place for criticism, but really, what does Yitro get credit for?
Solution.
For the solution. And that's what's truly beneficial. Then Rashi says he was also given the name Yitro because when he converted and he accepted upon himself the mitzvot, so then they added on another letter to become not from Yeter, but Yitro. Why the Vav? That's a good question. Rashi doesn't explain. Vav is all about, there's a medrash that says that when after Cain murdered Hevel, so Hashem placed a sign on his forehead. That's what the pasuk says. And the medrash says that the sign was the letter Vav. And the next week's Parsha starts, Ve'ela hamishpatim. And these are the laws. Lynn and other excellent teachers like Lynn, English teachers, will tell you, it's not ideal. Sometimes you can start a sentence with an and. You can. But it's not not the best approach, Why does it start with an and? Rashi says because it's connecting Parshat Mishpatim with Parshat Yitro, that both were from Har Sinai. The major principles of the Ten Commandments were from Har Sinai, and the details, the civil laws, all the different details in Parshat Mishpatim also were given at Har Sinai. But so what is Vav? Vav is a letter that connects. Vav is a connector, right? Vav is and. A Vav is also the word that the Torah uses for hooks. The Vavin in the Mishkan were the hooks that connected the tapestries together. So Vav represents the idea that it's not just about me. It's about me and. It's about me and you. It's about me and others. It's about me and a community that we're together with others. So maybe that's why it's a Vav that's given to Yitro, because that's really at the heart of Judaism. It's a Vav. Vav is, it's not just about the person, it's about the person and Hashem. Vav. It's about the person and other people, Ben Am L'Chavero. And that's why Cain gets the letter Vav, because what does he say to Hashem? Hashem Rachi Anochi. Am I my brother's keeper? Right? That's the story has it. I don't know if it's true. That in the zoo, the chimpanzee was reading two books. One was Origin of the Species of Darwin. The other one is the Bible. They said to him, what are you doing? And the chimpanzee responded, trying to figure out, am I my brother's keeper or am I my keeper's brother? So, and Cain asked that question rhetorically to Hashem, because Hashem says, where's Hevel? Where did Hevel go? And Cain says, Hashem Rachi Anochi, am I my brother's keeper? And Hashem doesn't answer, but we know the answer. The answer is the whole purpose of the Torah, Lynn. The whole purpose of the Torah is to answer that question. The answer is yes. And that's why the mark, I just wanted to spell it out. You got this already, but Lynn, but I want to spell it out. That is why the letter that was put on Cain's forehead was a Vav, because Cain didn't understand how important that is. And that's the letter that he learned. And that's why the Vavim in the Mishkan remind us that things are interconnected. We're connected with others. And maybe that's why his name was Reuel. He got Yeter because a portion was added in the Torah. But then he got the letter Vav specifically. Why the letter Vav? A nice question to ask at the table. When he became Jewish, why did he get the letter Vav? Great question for the Shabbos table. And that's an incredible message, isn't it? That the importance of, it's the idea that it's not just about I, but it's we, it's it's you and the other person.
Doesn't it also mean like his?
Or
In addition to Rashi's ideas, whatever. Now, doesn't it also mean his? Shalom, when you put the O at the end?
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. O is also, it's his. Shalom, very nice.
Whatever the root is, Yeter.
Right,
Yeter,
right.
No?
No.
So it's whatever, like, if he's added on, right? What did you say the root was? Like to add, whether it's the respect, the knowledge, the wisdom.
That's right. Right.
Maybe it's his doing from the actions he's taken.
Wonderful. Letting the people on Zoom see the people in the shiur, the good-looking people in the shiur. But that's a wonderful idea that it's his yet there. It's his personality. It's his he gave of himself. It's his wisdom. It's his energy, and it's yet there shalom. Love it. Wonderful. Beautiful. V is also this idea of that it's not just you, Moshe, it's you and. Great. Now, the pasuk says that Yitro comes back, and he actually brings Tzipporah and the children, and they reunite, and they come to the place Har Elokim, and they were at the mountain of God. We've discussed in the past that there's kind of a lot of debate and discussion among the commentaries. When exactly did Yitro reunite or unite with the Jewish people? Was it before Matan Torah, which is the way it's presented in the Chumash, right? Because the Aseret Dibur happened in the next chapter. Or is it really after they came to Har Sinai and after the giving of the Torah? So a couple indications that lead some of the commentaries to say that he came after Matan Torah is that it already says Har Elokim, that he came to the mountain of God. Moreover, it says that Moshe, when he responds to Yitro, he says, I'm teaching Bnei Yisrael, and I'm issuing rulings, at Chuke Elokim ve'Toratav, the statutes of God and his Torot. Pasuk Tezayin. And so based on that, some of the commentaries say that really Yitro came after Matan Torah, after Bnei Yisrael came to Har Sinai, because in the next chapter it says Bnei Yisrael traveled and arrived at Har Sinai. They arrived to the mountain of God, or of Chorev, and they received the Torah. If indeed Yitro comes after Matan Torah, now Ramban disagrees. Ramban says, no, don't get all excited. Really, Yitro came before Matan Torah, and he gives explanations. But according to the opinion, the school of thought that Yitro really came after, so then why does it go out of its way to place this section prior to the giving of the Torah, if indeed he came after? And so that's an interesting question. Some want to say that you see that that this lesson of that every single person has a connection to Torah. That's really one of the ideas of Yitro to Moshe. It's not just about you and Hashem, and no, there should be other judges and other officers, because other people have the ability to have scholarship and to connect to Torah, and everyone has a relation with Hashem. So that's an important message. Number two is that Yitro is somebody who's a seeker. He's trying to grow. And look, he converts, or at least it sounds like he joins Bnei Israel. There's a whole question: does he stay with Bnei Israel? Does he leave Bnei Israel? But so Yitro is somebody who's a seeker of truth, who is willing to grow. He's willing to change his life. So not only is Moshe willing to listen to Yitro, but as we started, right, Vayishma Yitro. And so maybe that's why this is a prelude. It's a prelude to Matan Torah, because that's really a key lesson of Torah, which is this notion of growing, of seeking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's other suggestions that are brought in terms of what's the lesson that we get specifically from Yitro. Accept truth from wherever it comes. And when it's a good suggestion, wise suggestion, then listen to it. Yeah, Nechama.
Going to ask the same thing. I thought her father brought her.
Yeah, so Rashi figures it out. It's a good question, because I thought Moshe went back to Mitzrayim with Zipporah, but sounds like over here that Yitro was coming with Zipporah to meet Bnei Israel after they left Mitzrayim. So Rashi works it out that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, go back to Mitzrayim, so Moshe took his wife and children. Then when Aaron greeted him, it says, and he said, who are they? So Aaron recommended that they go back. And they actually went back. And then they came, and so they stayed with Yitro, according to this, that Zipporah and the children were not there at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim.
Yeah,
And they met up with them after Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is really interesting.
It almost makes sense that Yitro brought them so that they could participate in that.
Yeah, that's also true, right? That's also true. Yeah. Okay. That's right. It makes sense that after Matan Torah, there'll be a lot of questions to ask. That's right. Now, when Yitro hears about all the good that Hashem did for Bnei Israel, take a look at Pasuk Chet. Vayisaper Moshe lechotnu et kol asher asa Hashem leparo leMitzrayim. And Moshe tells his father-in-law everything that Hashem did to Paro and to Mitzrayim and the plagues and the splitting of the sea, and how Hashem saved Bnei Yisrael. The pasuk says, "Vayichad Yitro." The Yitro Vayichad. What is Vayichad? So the Gemara brings, this is page 396, third line, Vayichad Yitro. So there's a debate in the Talmud. What is the meaning of Vayichad, Marvin? One explanation is Rav. Rav says Shehevir cherev chada al basora. Vayichad means sharp, and it means that Yitro took a sharp blade over his body, and what Rav means is that he did bris milah. That Yitro was so inspired by Yetziat Mitzrayim and the Melchemet Amalek and Kriyas Yamsuf, before that he converted, he became part of the Jewish people, and he gave himself, or he had somebody give him a bris. Rashi, however, here brings the second pshat. First, he says, "Vayichad Yitro." The simple pshat is that he was happy. He was just so happy to hear this for Bnei Yisrael, for justice in the world, for his daughter's family. So, but Rashi brings another pshat here that Nasa Besara Chadudim, that his body started developing a rash, or getting boils on it. Meitzar al Ibud Mitzrayim, that there was part of him that was upset about, it was like prickles. He felt prickles of unease over what happened to the Egyptians. He was a little bit upset, and he was one of the advisors of Paro, says the Medrash. But Rashi says, Hainu to Amri Inchi, what does it say? That there were 3 different advisors to Paro. One was Yitro, and Bilam, and Eov. Bilam said, go for it, I think. And Yitro kind of opposed it, and Eov was quiet. Okay, so there's a medrash like that. But Rashi says over here that he had prickles of unease, and he was distressed a little bit about Mitzrayim's destruction. And Hainu Damri Inshi, Giura ad Asara Dari, Lo Tivze Arma Biape. That in front, if you're in front of a convert, even though he converted, that he feels a connection to the non-Jewish world, or to his previous heritage. And so what you see here is really interesting, that there's different interpretations here about Yitro. And maybe, Yitro's struggle is, am I a Midianite or am I a Jew? All his life, he was a high priest of Midian, expert in idolatry. Now suddenly he's Jewish and connected to this remarkable people. So Yitro has, kind of mixed feelings about the salvation of the Jewish people. And what the Lechem Asher derives from this also is that you can have a possibility where a person is performing mitzvos, living an otherwise from life, but yet have other allegiances and have other affiliations. You could have a person who's davening with a minyan, but when he misses a few minutes of a football game, then he gets upset. You could have a person who's maybe disconnected with Hashem, from Hashem, but who's still able to say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and there's some mitzvahs that the person is doing. So you see here something that my Rabbi taught us, which is that after he earned a PhD in Harvard, they asked Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, what did you learn in Harvard? And he said, I learned that human beings are complicated and life is complicated. And so Vayichad Yitro, that Yitro is a complicated figure. Is he a Midianite or a Jew? And it says Vayichad, you have 2 different interpretations. Does that mean that he was so happy, and so happy that he gave himself a bris? Or was it that he prickles of unease on his body because there was something that distressed him about the downfall of Mitzrayim? Pasuk Tet. Okay, I'm glad I caught Lynn's attention. What's that? Right. That's for the last pasuk. It says Vayishalach Moshe Chotno Vayelech Lo Al Artso. So the question is, when does that happen? We have to learn about. Okay, so now we have Yitro, and in Parshat Yitro you have Mam at Har Sinai, the revelation at Har Sinai. Okay, we want to look at those psukim. Perek Yutet, B'chodesh Hashlishi Latzeit Bnei Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim B'yom Hazeh Bo Midbar Sinai. So they come to Har Sinai. Again, some say it seems like they're already at Har Sinai because it says that Yitro joined them at Har Elokim, and Moshe is teaching them the laws of God. Okay, so it could be that really Perek Yud really happens after Perek Yud. In any case, in Perek Yud Pasuk Aleph, it says that on that day they came to Har Sinai. Rashi says, why does it say Bayom Hazeh? Should have said Bayom Ahu. On that very day, what does it say? On this day. Rashi says famously that Shiyu Divrei Torah Chadashim Alecha, that the words of Torah should be new to you, should be fresh and vibrant to you, as if you received them today. A lot of times you get something new and you're so excited to get a present. Then after a month or two, a year or two, right, it becomes boring and you begin to take it for granted. Similarly with the Torah, right? There's a certain excitement at the beginning when you start observing something, but then over the course of time, right, it loses its wonder, it loses its magic, it loses its sense of amazement. And what we should try to do when it comes to Torah, when it comes to a relationship, to try your best to keep it vibrant and to keep it fresh and to always say, whoa, how lucky I am to be Jewish. How lucky I am to have Torah and Mitzvos. How lucky I am to have the people we love in our lives. B'chol yom yuhu be'inecha kechadashim, as if you received it today. Vayisu mirafidim v'yavo midbar Sina v'yachanu b'midbar v'yichan sham Yisrael neged ahar, and Bnei Yisrael encamped opposite the mountain. Rashi points out, why does it say Vayichan? Why does it say Vayichan? It should have said what? Vayachanu Sham Yisrael Neged Ahar.
What?
Oh, very good. So Esther and Rashi say, Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. They were like one person with one heart. And that's a beautiful comment of Rashi. And this needs to be the prelude to receiving the Torah. A precondition of receiving the Torah is, I'm looking around the table and looking at people who care about other people, who are Balei Chesed, and I know all of you. And so you understand this message that a precondition to receiving the Torah is being united, and it's caring about others. And so Rashi says, Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. Now, the second half of Rashi is not usually quoted because that's like a downer. Rashi says, Aval shar kol hachaniyot b'taromot v'machloket. All the other encampments, they were having fights and arguments. We don't like to read that second half of the Rashi. Unfortunately, it has plagued the Jewish people over the course of time. But we need to try to recapture that Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, to be like one person with one heart. When Paro and Mitzrayim come after Bnei Yisrael, Rashi quotes a similar expression back in Parshat Beshalach. It says that Mitzrayim, that Bnei Yisrael saw Mitzrayim coming after them. So Rashi says on page 370, B'leiv echad ki'ish echad. Also it says Mitzrayim noseya in the singular. It should have said Mitzrayim nasu in the plural. So Rashi says, B'leiv echad ki'ish echad, with one heart, like one person. So you could be united for good, you could be united for oppression and persecution, but also, as you might have noticed, Maxine, what did you notice there? That by in this week's Parsha it says what? Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. Ish is first, and then heart. But by Paro it says what? B'leiv echad ki'ish echad, with one heart and like one person. Why? Yeah, Lynn, what do you think?
No, I had a question.
So maybe because what unites the Egyptians? It's whatever mission they're involved in. It happens to be a mission of hatred and persecution and darkness. But so they're b'leiv echad because they have a mission, a united mission. Therefore ki'ish echad. Therefore, that's what unites them together. Bnei Yisrael, it's a higher level. That yes, we do have shared missions and we have shared goals and shared values, but it's ki'ish echad. We're like one body. We're like one organic body. And that's why if one Jew is harmed anywhere in the world, every single Jew feels the pain. And when there's Jews who are being held hostage in unbearable, terrible conditions, right? That's why we're thinking about them and davening for them and caring about them and praying for them every single day, because we're ki'ish echad, b'leiv echad. It's not just the strategy or the plan that brings us together, but it's ki'ish echad. But by Paro, it's their plan of b'leiv echad that brings them ki'ish echad. But for the Jews, it's even greater than that. It's one organic body that's called Am Yisrael. We're an entity that goes back vertically across the generations and in the future, but also horizontally, including all Jews that are alive today. And so that's why Ki'ish Echad, B'leiv Echad. You're not allowed to bear a grudge against another Jew, even if they do something not nice to you. You're allowed to be upset at them, and you could ask them to point out that what they did hurt you. But why are you not allowed to bear a grudge or take revenge? Okay, taking revenge is different than bearing a grudge, but the pasuk says, "Lo tikom v'lo titor." You shouldn't take revenge. You shouldn't bear a grudge. Says the Gemara, that's a very challenging mitzvah. Gemara says, you want to know why? Because we're ki'ish echad b'leiv echad. And it says, if you have a knife and by accident you cut your finger with the steak knife, do you then take the knife with the other hand and take revenge on the first hand? No, that would be the height of foolishness, because you're one body. So you don't take revenge and bear grudge against your own body. So the Talmud Yerushalmi says that that's at the heart of mitzvot between Jew and Jew, and why you shouldn't take revenge and shouldn't bear a grudge. There's different ideas behind it. It's a very challenging mitzvah. But somebody does something wrong to you, shouldn't even bear a grudge. Well, you're not supposed to be like a rock, and you're supposed to have a conversation with the person. It also doesn't mean that you have to be the best friends with that person and go to the movies with that person. But you're supposed to try to reach a point where you forgive the person. Why? So the Gemara says, at the heart of it is because the Jewish people are one body. And it's maybe easier said than done, but to see it in that way, and therefore to take revenge and bear a grudge against a fellow Jew, you're really doing what? It's going against yourself. You're hurting yourself in the process. Yeah, Lynn.
Are you troubled at all by the word neged?
Interesting.
Next to the al yad or whatever the Hebrew would be, or next to or by.
Interesting.
Why introduce like an oppositional thing, especially when you're talking about, oh, they're so unified?
Yeah.
And there's still, is it foreshadowing to them not really being ready?
Yeah, that's interesting. I you know what? I never paid too much attention to that word, to be honest. I don't like that phrase, to be honest, by the way. But what, the first 45 minutes I wasn't honest? So Jordana knows. We always joke about it,
But is that strange word to throw in there?
Yeah, Rashi says neged is like they were on the eastern side of it, and that neged means east. So Rashi, something's bothering Rashi, which is, so Rashi's bothered like you about the word neged.
Right.
He doesn't ask the question, but there's always a question behind the comment of Rashi. His question is that I could have said Eitzelahar or Al Yadahar. So it says Negedahar. Rashi says it means to the eastern side of the mountain. But maybe let's look into that. Maybe it means that that while they approached the mountain, but maybe there was some reticence, there was some hesitance. They weren't ready yet for Matan Torah. Interesting.
They say when Moshe died that he was opposite. It's like one is challenging, not challenging, but there were these two standards. One kind of challenged the other, or one was always there to make things, to influence you in the wrong way.
That the Balpour is there to influence you. It's kind of like a constant.
It's the lowest of the low. Torah and what we stand for is the highest of the high. But we always have to face it. Always got it. In the front.
Very nice, very nice. But there's a constant battle between maybe the Yitro Tov and Yitro Hara, between Torah and Balpour. Now, So in terms of our relationship with Torah, you have number one, it should be fresh and new, as if it's given to us that very day. Number two, you have to approach it with achdut, and that's why that's mentioned first. And number three is pasuk vav. Hashem says to them, "Ve'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh," that you should be a kingdom of kohanim and a holy nation. And if you ask, what's the mission statement of the Jewish people? So here Hashem says it to Bnei Israel, that you should be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. And what does that mean? Goy kadosh. Kadosh always means separate, that we're different. And we've often been hated or disliked, or people have been suspicious of us because we're different. But we are different. We have different standards and responsibilities and mitzvot. But what does it mean, mamlechet kohanim? A kingdom of kohanim? We're not all kohanim. What's the job of a kohen for Bnei Israel? He's a teacher. And so we're mamlechet kohanim is that our nation are filled with teachers for the rest of the world. We're supposed to bring Jewish values to the world around us. We're supposed to bring godliness to the world around us. And so this phrase, mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, is we have to be separate, but a part of the world. Separate with in terms of greater responsibilities, but to not cut ourselves off from the people, because we have to treat everyone with respect. And it's important for us to bring values in the way we act, in the way we lead as role models. We have to be mamlechet kohanim to bring the values to the world around us. And the final point to wrap it all together that I wanted to highlight here, it's a little bit tricky, but here Moshe is engaging in this shuttle diplomacy in these psukim. What does it say? Because look at verse 3. Moshe goes up to the mountain. Moshe Elokim. And Hashem speaks to him. Then and he tells him that you should be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. Then verse 7, Vayavo Moshe, Vayikra liziknei ha'am. He tells them what he heard from Hashem. This is all on the second day. The first day, that's when they come to Har Sinai. Second day, Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to Har Sinai, and Hashem gives him this message that the Jewish people should be a mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh. And Moshe comes down to Bnei Israel. And vayanu kol ha'am yachdav, and the nation responds and says what? Kol asher dibra Hashem naseh. Yes, we're in. Count us in. We're going to follow the word of Hashem. Vayashav Moshe divrei amal Hashem. Moshe then brings the words of Hashem, the response of Hashem. Then Moshe Rabbeinu brings the response of the nation back to Hashem. Okay, the Klei Yakar points that out, Esther. Esther and Klei Yakar. What Hashem doesn't know, Moshe has to tell Hashem what Bnei Israel said. The Klei Yakar says, like a parent knows but likes hearing it because to receive nachas. So Hashem knew about it, but Moshe wants to give Hashem nachas. In any case, when does Moshe Rabbeinu bring this message back to Hashem? Must be on the third day. Well, it makes sense to say that he went back up on the next day, on the third day. And that's what Rashi says. Rashi says, B'yom ha'machar yom shlishi. You got it? First day they come to Har Sinai. Second day, Moshe goes up, and Hashem tells him this message, and Moshe brings the message back to Bnei Israel. In other words, that you have a mission. You're going to be a nation that are going to be leaders and teachers, and Bnei Israel say, okay, we're in. The next day, Rashi says, second half of Pasuk Chet is the next day. Vayashav Moshe divrei amal Hashem. That's the next day that Moshe brings the people's commitment back to Hashem. And then Hashem, what does Hashem say to Moshe? This is now day 3. This is a key pasuk, pasuk Tet, and with this, the last idea will end. But it's a Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Hinei anochi ba elecha ba'av ha'anan. I'm going to come to you in the thickness of a cloud. Ba'avur yishma am b'dabri imach, that the people could see that I'm speaking to you. V'gam b'cha yaminu le'olam, and then the people will believe in you. Right? That's what Hashem says to Moshe on day 3. What's the next words of, what are the last words of that pasuk? Vayeged Moshe et divrei ha'am el Hashem. Moshe reported the words of the nation to Hashem. Wait. No, it should have said what? Should have said Vayaged Moshe et divrei Hashem el ha'am. It's confusing. It's almost as if the psukim got confused. But Hashem to Moshe, Moshe b'nei Israel to... So Moshe is engaging in this shuttle diplomacy, back and forth. He's the envoy, going back and forth from Har Sinai back to the ground where the people are. But you see, it's on day 3 that Moshe brings the words of the nation back to Hashem that they're in. Okay, they've agreed. And then Hashem says to Moshe, I'm going to come to you in the thickness of a cloud. I'm going to speak to you. Bnei Yisrael are going to believe in you. Hashem is speaking to Moshe. And then it says, Vayaged Moshe es divrei ha'am el Hashem, that Moshe reports the words of the nation to Hashem. It's out of place. It should have said, I would have expected it to say that Moshe then brings the divrei Hashem el ha'am. So Rashi is a blow-away Rashi. You ready? You ready? This Rashi is one of the best. This is what is an amazing Rashi. I'm getting you excited. I don't want to build it up too much. Rashi, look at Rashi. Vayaged Moshe b'yom hamachra shu revi lechodesh. So it's the next day that Moshe is bringing back the words of the Am to Hashem. Et divrei Am, shuva al davar zeh shamati mehem. Moshe says back to Hashem, I'm hearing an answer. I mean that I heard an answer from them, and I want to report it to you, Hashem. Sheritzonam lishmoa mimcha. They don't want to hear it through me. They don't want to hear it through the thickness of a cloud. Sheritzonam lishmoa mimcha. The Jewish people want to hear from you, God. They want to hear it directly from the source, from Hashem. There's no comparison to hearing from a messenger of the king than from hearing from the king himself. This is still Moshe quoting Bnei Israel. We want to see Hashem. We want to see Hashem. We want to hear from Hashem directly. Whoa. By Yomer Hashem al Moshe, stay in Rashi. Hashem says to Moshe, Im kain shemaskikin ledaber imam. If indeed they want me to speak directly to them, okay, I'll agree to do that. But then they have to sanctify themselves. Go tell the people they have to sanctify themselves. And that's why they have to get ready. And that's why they need 3 days. And then, what does it say? Look at verse Yud Aleph. Look at verse Yud Aleph. Then on the 3rd day, Kibi Yom HaShlishi, Yerid Hashem le'enei kol ha'am. The Hashem will descend in the sight of the entire people. Wait. If you don't have the pshat of Rashi, what's the question? Hashem said, I'm going to come in the cloud. It's going to be cloudy. It's going to be foggy. I'm going to speak to Moshe. Now suddenly Hashem is saying, I'm going to appear in front of the whole people. And I'm going to declare the Aseres HaDibros to the whole people directly. So this is a collector's item, Rashi, which is suggesting that Bnei Yisrael, they were not happy with the way Hashem presented the plan initially. The initial plan of Matan Torah was going to be where Hashem was going to speak in a cloud through Moshe, and that Bnei Yisrael will believe Moshe, and then Moshe will convey it to the people. And Bnei Yisrael essentially said, we want a more comprehensive experience. We want to connect directly to Hashem, and that we want that connection. And then after Hashem does speak, the way Rashi explains it is after Hashem says the first 2 commandments. Some say that it's after the 10 commandments, because we see after the commandments, what did Bnei Israel say? Bnei Israel say, page 412, that they suddenly jump back and they say, Daber atah imanu. We want you to speak to us. And we don't want God to speak to us. Well, that was the original plan. Bnei Israel said no, but we want Hashem. In an incredible fashion, Hashem agrees to Bnei Israel's request. But now, after Hashem speaks to Bnei Israel, either with the 10 commandments or the first 2 commandments, as a machlokas, when this happens, Bnei Israel say to Moshe, we can't handle it. We can't handle it, actually. That really it's better if you speak to us, and that God doesn't speak directly to us, because then we're going to die. So it's a whole issue here, and maybe we'll elaborate another time in terms of a lot in this parsha is which word is access, right? You go to an event. What level access do you have? Remember at the APAC policy conferences, right? Everyone had different levels of access. In a shul, mainly it's equal access. Everyone's invited to join the community. Everyone's supposed to be a part of the community. And here there's a question about access in terms of, right, where Hashem says, I'm going to speak to Moshe, I'm going to speak to you in the thickness of a cloud. And Bnei Israel respond, we want a more comprehensive experience. We want to all have access to Hashem. We all want to see Hashem. And then Hashem says, okay, but then you need to have 3 days of preparation. And then I'm going to appear to Bnei Israel. And then he appears to Bnei Israel. And then they suddenly say, whoa, this is too much access. This is too close for comfort to the fiery Hashem. And so they want to be close to Hashem, they love Hashem, but then they have yiras Hashem. They want to be close to Hashem and then yiras Hashem. And that's really part of what's going on with Yitro, right? Where Yitro is saying that we want to increase the level of access for Bnei Israel. So get more judges involved, get more officers involved, get the people involved in the experience. Because really the Torah is for everyone. So that's really, that's I think an interesting theme of the Parsha is the level of access that we, Bnei Israel, have and every Jew has. And the end of the day is that that every single Jew has tremendous access and a relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But while you love Hashem and you want to be close to Hashem, there's also the dimension of what? Of fear of Hashem. And so we want to be close, but we also want to drop back. Baruch atah. We're speaking to Hashem in the second person, as if we're like buddies, or as if we're close. But then it's Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvosav, through his mitzvos. We're now, again, speaking about Hashem in the third person. We go back and forth sometimes in our prayers between speaking to Hashem directly and then speaking about Hashem. You open up your hand and sustain everyone. Then tzaddik karov Hashem lekol karov. Karov Hashem lekol karov. So in the Ashrei, for example, check the Ashrei that we say every day. We speak directly to Hashem, and then it's speaking about Hashem. And perhaps this is also this tension and dialectic between wanting to be close to Hashem through loving Hashem, but then recognizing that we have to be in awe and fear and reverence of Hashem at the same time. And right, Maxina, we have to find kind of the combination and the balance between Ahavas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Okay, we continually accept the Torah and renew our commitment to Torah, and so many lessons that we learn from Matan Torah. Yeshkoach.
The formula because it also presents us the combination of collective and personal responsibility. It is quite relaxing to know that you are sharing the responsibility with a group, because if not you, someone else would take care. But when it's Ishahat, who exactly is this one person?
Nice. Wonderful. Wonderful idea. That on the one hand, we rely on one another and support one another, but you have to. You can't just say, "Oh, somebody else is doing it. Somebody else is doing the chesed. Somebody else is learning Torah." That wonderful idea. Ki ish echad, that you're the person who has to step up. Wonderful idea, Malka. Shavua Tov. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Great,
Thanks, Mark.
great portion. My
Thanks so
son,
much,
this is
Mark.
my son's bar mitzvah portion. We've enjoyed it. He said it was 49 years ago that he had his
Oh,
bar mitzvah.
wow, amazing. That's
The
great.
only one that was not named for a Jew.
Thank
Also,
you, Rabbi
Balak is
Topp.
the other one.
Hmm?
Balak is the other one.
Balak. Okay, I'll remind him. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Wonderful.